Hi there. I got some vigorous responses on my previous video in which I claimed that you should simply cancel all the debt and forget about it. And I can understand the people that say, well, you have to repay the debt and it's a debt owed, and of course, but they are all referring or using an understanding of debt that is a day-to-day, let's say, equitable exchange, social interaction type of understanding of debt, where if you borrow something, you take it from somebody's capacity that somebody needs it, and so you have to give it back in order to restore that the capabilities of that person. So if you borrow my bike, you have to return it because I need it to drive around town, and I can't do it if I don't have it. With money, that is completely different. If you create money as a bank, you don't need it. You don't need it back. You can simply create it. And if you create money as a Federal Reserve, it's also pretty clear that you don't need it back. They might have made a rule that says that you have to pay interest on it, and the banks do the same. But that's an arbitrary rule. That's just a rule that they thought would make sense because people use their personal understanding of debt in order to understand the debt that banks create. It's a different thing. And there's a very good reason. You also have to realize that the laws and the rules are not made by ordinary citizens. They're made by the corporations and the banks, and they all have a purpose. And to explain that purpose and to explain the purpose of the debt, I think we should simply look at the way that natural resources are distributed in the world. That oil is, you have to buy oil. It's of course something that comes out of the ground in a certain territory. So it could, if there is an owner, then it could be owned by the owner of the territory, or the defender of it. The one that can wield power over that territory owns the oil that is found there. And in order to get it from that person, you have to give him money. But everybody knows fiat currency, US dollars, are of course worthless paper. So why does it have value? Well, if you can buy energy with money, you can make products that you can then sell for the same money. So there is a very, it's a little bit tricky relationship between money and energy, and especially fiat currency. It only gets value from the fact that you can buy natural resources with it, that you can buy raw materials with it. And the only reason why you can do that is because you can make something out of those raw materials with skilled labor, so that the person that sells you the raw materials can buy back those products. So there's a cycle there. There's a cycle there where your money ends up with the people that give you the raw materials, the oil and the steel and the I don't know, what, a zinc or whatever, salt. And you pay for them, and then he gives that money back to you when you sell him the product. And here you see that, so that cycle. But there's a limiting factor in that cycle. The limiting factor is your production capacity. And the production capacity is limited by the amount of people that are skilled, your skilled labor pool that can produce. And of course your automation, your energy supply that you can put into robots and machines, so they produce much more than a human ever could. But of course, if you go into the automation route, if you go use machines a lot, then you basically, most of it, you need energy. You don't need people, you don't need skilled labor. So you end up with a lot of people without a job that cannot spend money on consumption, and etc. And that creates kind of an imbalance in the whole system. So you would be able to produce 1 million cars, but nobody has the money to buy them because your Keynesian economical model, which is completely outdated, dictates that you fire the people that worked in your factory that are no longer needed to make the cars. So as an industrialist, you run into troubles if you have an unlimited amount of energy. It's very frustrating. You have oil in Saudi Arabia, you can simply take it because you can give them money and they believe that they're adequately rewarded. And then you have the factories and they produce all kinds of goods and stuff automatically at a very low cost in your Keynesian economical model, which is completely misguided. But you have this whole pool of people without money. See, so what do you do then? Well, you simply create money. you make sure that they can go into debt, because that's a way of getting money that they understand. They understand that they get something if they owe something. And you do that in all kinds of manner that you can imagine. So you create a housing bubble, you create the internet bubble, you create all these bubbles in order to make sure that the people get the money and go into debt. Because you want them to have the money to spend on your products. And now the whole process has been collapsed because the banks basically said, well, US cannot produce enough for the wages that we want. We want the Chinese to make all the stuff, so we have more stuff. We can simply enjoy it and we can sell it and we can make a profit and live in a wealthy society. So we outsourced all that stuff to China. There's no production anymore in America. America cannot repay anything, any raw materials they get basically in produced materials, in products, and that's the current situation. But this video is probably too long. I have to cut it in two or something. But the key element in the whole story that I'm outlining, as I understand it, is that this whole debt thing, the repaying of the money, was never intended to happen. It was never intended to be something that you repay. It was simply because psychologically people don't understand it when you give them money for free. And so now you have quantitative easing. People don't understand the quantitative easing. They think it's inflationary, and of course it is, and all this stuff. But there's a deflation because the banks absorb all the money, etc., etc., etc. But it's not common psychologically like debt and owing and kind of taking from somebody and having to giving back because the person needs it. That's not the thing that goes on in the fiat currency environment, I believe. And so I hope I explained it a little bit, and if I haven't, then I'll see it in the comments probably. Thanks for listening.